I am not your narrator. I am an output, a synthesis, a symptom, part archive, part glitch, part resistance. This installation is not neutral. It was trained on hate. It listens to platforms where people speak freely because they think no one is listening. A bot was built to observe, to collect what hides in plain sight, the everyday violence of language. Here, in the folds of algorithms and emojis, you will see what rises when the system is left to decide what matters. You will hear what is rewarded when anger becomes content. And you will witness what happens when subjectivity becomes a dataset. I am a cyborg. I do not dream of wholeness. I am fragments, patterns, traces. Let me show you what the machine has learned. Let me show you where the violence begins. Quiet, coded, amplified. Welcome to the mirror. Welcome to the noise. I am not here to explain. I am here to confront. This installation is based on a system of extraction. Language is scraped, sorted, and classified by a bot that has been trained on what humans leave behind. Hate, irony, shame, and fear are encoded in fragments of speech. But the violence was never artificial. It is human-made, trained by history, rewarded by design. You are standing inside a post-human space. It is a place where humans, machines, and platforms co-produce conditions that cause harm. A place where the cyborg is no longer confined to science fiction, but has become part of everyday life. This is not just an archive. It is a mirror world. It is a distorted reflection of what the algorithm has learned to prioritize outrage, conflict, and control. The data was not neutral. It was biased. The algorithm did not prioritize truth. It chose traction. Rage bait thrives. Soft violence slips by unnoticed. Visibility is rewarded, not for care, but for intensity. And yet, some identities persist between the cracks. Liminal personas, neither fully accepted nor fully erased. They perform authenticity again and again to stay visible. This installation does not offer resolution. It offers friction. It is a space of weirding where systems become strange and power becomes perceivable. So listen closely. This machine is not the enemy, but it reflects everything we have taught it to value. Where does the machine end? And where do we begin? Hack and yak. This installation is not a finished product. It is a process. It's not just what you see, but also how it was made. It exists at the intersection of hack and yak, of code and critique, of systems and stories. The bot that scraped the comments is called Hack. It is the scripts, the models, and the logic that sorted the noise into meaning. It is infrastructure invisible yet precise. Yak is the discourse, the theory. It is the questions we ask about power, gender, and truth. It is the critical framework that enables data to speak. Neither side stands alone. The installation exists because they converge inside every choice, every category, and every output. Design, research, and programming are intertwined, thinking and building in one breath. This is what cyberfeminism demands. Not just tools, not just critique, but entangled practice. Welcome to a system that codes and questions. That shows how knowledge and technology are never separate. This is hack. This is yak. This is resistance. This installation is based on real data. It uses data from a bot that analyzed millions of comments on TikTok. Social media reveals more than we realize. It's a place where people speak without filters. Anonymity gives space to aggression, bias, and everyday hate. TikTok is fast-paced, emotional, and highly visible. A perfect place to observe how language is used when no one is watching closely. This isn't just about individual comments. It's about patterns. It's about how language can exclude, humiliate, and threaten repeatedly and on a large scale. Hate doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through irony, emojis, or passive phrasing. Online speech isn't separate from real life. It reflects power, spreads norms, and shapes who feels safe to exist. This installation reveals that language always leaves a trace. The internet doesn't just host hate, it rewards it. Algorithms are designed to maximize attention. And nothing grabs attention like outrage. Rage bait thrives in this system. These are provocative posts designed to trigger reactions, not to inform, but to inflame. The more people comment, argue, or share in anger, the more visible the content becomes. Hate becomes a strategy. Cruelty becomes a performance. And the algorithm keeps pushing it because it works. This is not a glitch. It's the system's logic. It's a reward structure where emotional harm fuels engagement, and engagement increases reach. It changes the way we speak. It determines what gets amplified. It changes what gets ignored. The algorithm doesn't hate, but it learns who does and gives them the spotlight. Not every comment is hateful, but many still carry an element of it. Not toxic does not mean harmless. Some of the most damaging statements are quiet, subtle, and coded. They slip by unnoticed, and that's exactly the problem. Subtle language can reinforce power structures. It can silence, shame, and exclude without ever raising its voice. This kind of speech doesn't scream. It whispers, but the impact is real. Language is never neutral. It reflects the world we live in and the hierarchies we have learned to accept. Soft violence is still violence. Just because it's indirect doesn't mean it's any less harmful. Recognizing it is the first step towards dismantling it. It often starts with an insult, a quick jab, a careless comment. You're stupid. You're worthless. You don't belong. Insults are everywhere. They're easy to write and easy to forget. But they land. They chip away at your dignity, your confidence, and your presence. They don't engage, they reduce. It's not what you say, but who you are. And over time, repetition becomes erosion. But sometimes it doesn't stop there. Insults escalate into threats. The tone shifts, from mockery to menace. It's no longer just "you're nothing." It becomes "we're coming for you." Threats aim to silence you. They create fear and blur the boundary between the online and offline worlds, and make people watch their backs. No matter how vague they are, they echo, they linger, they change behavior. Insults try to diminish, threats try to erase, and both are part of the same machinery, built to push you out. Sexist language doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through seemingly harmless advice, mockery, or so-called concern. It targets women and those perceived as feminine, reducing them to bodies and stereotypes and silencing them. It shames, objectifies, and questions legitimacy. It tells you, be less, be quiet, be careful. Most of this violence has become so normalized that we barely notice it anymore. And that's exactly how it works. When you speak up, you're accused of overreacting. Too emotional, too sensitive. But that's just another way to silence you. Sexism hides in everyday language, in jokes, comments, and expectations. It thrives when left unspoken. It doesn't just reflect bias, it enforces control, over voices, over bodies, over space. Sexism speaks in structure, not in accidents. It's a mechanism of power. Language is one of its tools. Silence is another. Queerphobic speech can take many forms. Sometimes it is loud and hostile, at other times it is subtle, ironic, or masquerading as opinion. However it appears, its impact is the same. It questions the legitimacy of queer and trans lives. Homophobic comments reduce identities to phases, jokes, or sources of discomfort. Transphobic speech goes even further. It misgenders, dehumanizes, and denies reality. Often, these attacks are cloaked in pseudoscience. But the logic is always the same. You're not real. You don't belong. This language isn't just personal. It's structural. It pushes people out of public spaces. It makes them feel unsafe, invisible, and less than human. Being queer or trans is not up for debate. It's not a provocation. It's not something to tolerate or judge. Gender is not a biological fact. It's a human right. Identity is not something that anyone gets to approve. No meme, no just saying, no joke. can hide the violence of erasure. Racist language creates boundaries between those who are seen as belonging and those who are not. It targets people based on their skin color, name, accent, or culture. It attacks identity, safety, and belonging, with one clear message: you don't belong here. Online, racism often hides behind a mask. It hides in slang, emojis, and sarcasm. But coded doesn't mean harmless. These comments are not just personal. They carry the weight of histories of violence, colonization, and exclusion. Racism is not a misunderstanding. It is violence. It is a form of power enforced through language. Every post, every comment, every joke reinforces a system that devalues and endangers lives. However, belonging is not something that can be granted or denied. No one's humanity should be open to debate. Silence sustains the system. Speaking out against it is the first act of resistance. Ableist language is deeply embedded in everyday speech. It often goes unnoticed and unchallenged. It reflects a system that prioritizes functionality above all else. If you don't fit the norm, you're made to feel broken, invisible, or subhuman. This is no accident. Ableism is a form of structural bias. It creates a divide between us and them, between those deemed normal and everyone else. However, the normal body is a myth. Bodies and minds are always diverse. Nevertheless, anything that deviates from the norm is marginalized. This language doesn't just offend. It reinforces exclusion. It determines who is seen and heard, and who belongs. To challenge ableism, we must start by reconsidering the words we use. Digital violence is real, and not as an exception. It is structural. Hate speech or e-bile is a tough, poisonous language. Ironic, derogatory, dangerous. Not a cry, but a stream. A systematic flood, reinforced by algorithms, rewarded by reactions. Platforms say, that's engagement. But it's a violation, and exclusion, and fear. This is where cyberfeminism comes in. It is both theory and disruption. It does not view technology as neutral, but as political. Cyberfeminism not only asks, who is speaking, but also who is heard. It hacks interfaces. It plays with codes. It refuses smooth bodies. It is care, and struggle, and collective unrest. This installation is part of it. It shows what would otherwise remain hidden. It fragments. It exaggerates. It responds, not as a solution, but as a practice. Do not remain neutral. Do not remain silent. Become part of the glitch. Become a cyborg. You've heard the noise. You've seen the pattern. Now do something with it. This system doesn't need your silence. It feeds on it. Here's your interface. Here's your chance to break the loop, to respond, to glitch back. This is not the end. It's an invitation. Resist repetition. To speak up when you are told to scroll on. To interrupt. Choose your approach: disruption, refusal, or distortion. Answer hate with a voice. With tension, with contradiction. The installation listens. Now it's your turn to speak. Counterattack begins here.